is a modern society, very much infrastructure from merit, and the skill set is being refined. Now, there's nothing like practice with this stuff, by the way. Sabotage is not something you read online. It's a bit like tuning up the car for going online. But the fact is, of course, some of the skills are being there, and the people who are recruited and trained now are going to go back home at some point. They're not likely to be Reformed Democrats when they leave. And so we clearly have created both the animus that my child and others have pointed to, but we're also meeting the means for doing these, improving that skill set. And we are still essentially incredibly vulnerable to these attacks should they happen, and likely risk that we'll react. I mean, it's really surreal. I remember right after the 7/7 attack, the president was actually at a G7 meeting in Scotland. And they flew back, the attack was on Thursday, he flew back home, went to the FBI Academy at Quantico, and gave a speech. Said, this is why I want to wreck. I'm in London, this is why I want to wreck. They're second generation Pakistanis in the UK. I know there's maybe some link, but you know, can we parse this, provide a little more nuance maybe about what we're dealing with here? Because that clearly was not it. So what we have here though is a formulistic response of trying to hunt and destroy folks, and I think it is having that consequence. Now, there's a much broader conversation that needs to happen, what alienates folks, what creates attraction, policy issues, and so forth. But I think some of that can be a distractor away from this agenda I'm pushing if we're not willing to essentially accept that we're not going to win over every heart and mind on the planet, in the world we're in. And the means of causing destruction is now available in the 21st century kind of world where this stuff is out there. So we've got to have plans for dealing with it, but put it in the context of other hazards we have to deal with, like earthquakes and hurricanes and tamper beds and other kinds of challenges there. It's not defined as an existential threat. It's not. It's a very serious threat. And if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, it's very bad. But it's not the end of the world civilization as we know it. I think that's the bit.
You proposed, or you cited a proposal saying that you would model a security management organization, model that off the Federal Reserve. And you know, you talk about being resilient to civil society, but we also have to be vigilant of our constitutional rights. And I took an oath to the Constitution, and so did you. So, you know, just this week, the Federal Reserve, the executive is proposing giving the Federal Reserve more powers. And I don't know how you can subscribe to that idea, understanding that you understand there is ineptness in our national security apparatus, and just creating another organization would just compile that ineptness.
Sure. Well, of course, it doesn't sound so brilliant here in 2008 as the financial markets have melted down under the Fed's supervision. So you concede that point. But here was the basic argument that I was trying to make, and it's one that evolved in the most recent one. We have this basic problem that many of the challenges that we have to confront domestically transcend what a state and local can do. And we need to invest basically in managing these challenges in a way, though, that our Washington process is almost completely corrupted. And so Americans aren't willing to send money to the federal government to do stuff because they're going to get bridges to nowhere. So states and locals have the money to make the investment. We don't trust Washington to do this right. And the result is we basically end up with, you know, the kind of morass we're in, because we're not addressing real issues and real problems. The case I made most recently, but about how you deal with the critical infrastructure, vulnerability, build this resiliency, is I make a case that we should take this perhaps kind of approach. And it was sort of Fed light, and I'll get into why that model I think makes sense. But it basically we had this thing we called the BRAC Commission, the Base Realignment Commission. It was put in place because Congress was not very good at shutting down military bases and reassigning. It was, you know, it's not good for the political future, so they couldn't do it, and yet we had to realign this because it was built for the Second World War and things had changed. So we created a commission of basically former greats, half Democrats, half Republicans, who were advised by essentially surveys and studies and said, here's what should be done. And they presented it to the president, who had to bless it, and goes to Congress, and Congress says a thumbs up or thumbs down. And this was a way basically to overcome the fact that politics were horrible for trying to deal with this rational challenge. Well, I'm basically making a case that every mayor and governor, the next president comes in and asks me, I would say you task every mayor and governor in the next 6 months to give you your must-do list in that state.